before we get there, I want to talk about two things, two parts of the apparatus of scientific learning management that are very important. And kind of funny. They have interesting histories. One is grades and one is multiple choice tests. The first university in America, it's a college, to adopt grading as a standard is Mount Holyoke College. Before that, everybody wrote not grades, but long expository explanations of how somebody did responses to somebody's work. But Mount Holyoke decided it was going to be modern. In 1897, it adopted an A-B-C-D grading system. There was no E. It was too confusing for excellence, so it's A, B, C, D, and F. And that meant all of those comments that teachers wrote on papers, all of the different complexity of work that a student might produce in a term would be reduced to one scientific standardized grade, either A, B, C, D, or F for failure. Interestingly, the second major U.S. institution to adopt the grading system was the American Meatpackers Association. Since I'm an archivist, I actually did go back and look at some of the correspondence from the early 20th century when the American Meatpackers adopt grading, and it's fascinating to find out people are outraged. Meatpackers do not think something as complex as sirloin and chuck can be reduced to a simple ABCD grade. What's ironic about that is from the very beginning, for the American Meatpackers, even if there's an A attached, you can look at that A and you can find out all the written comments that the inspector, the meat inspector, gave that led up to that A grade. So they've never had a simple reduction to an ABCD grade. Meanwhile, ABCD grading spread like wildfire throughout the educational system and very soon became the standard way, with a very few exceptions now, the standard way to evaluate grammar school, secondary, and even college level college work. Peculiar, very peculiar. I think if Galileo had been told that in the 20th century people would reduce all the complexity of thinking to an ABCD grade, he'd be sure the lemmings had just gone off the cliff. And if he realized that in our interactive, do-it-yourself, modding, mix-up, hugely overloaded information age, we were still relying on grades, he would really be convinced that the lemmings had won. The second one is multiple choice testing. This history is almost as interesting. In the next lesson, I'm going to be talking about No Child Left Behind, the 2002 national policy, which makes standardized end-of-grade testing the policy for all education, publicly funded state education in the United States. And multiple choice testing are what? Get you into college, get you into graduate school, get you into law school, get you into medical school, are part of college rankings, how high are the grades, the grade point averages on standardized tests. I personally think it's an extremely impoverished way of measuring knowledge and keeping knowledge, again, discrete, as we saw in the classrooms, the math from 8 to 9, geography 9 to 10. So my editor, when I was writing Now You See It, said, stop complaining so much about standardized testing and multiple choice testing and tell us a little bit about that history. And to my astonishment, it turns out one person, one guy, Frederick J. Kelly, actually invented the standardized test. And the reason he did is fascinating and I think illustrative and another armament in our activist history that will help us change the future. In 1914, as a doctoral dissertation student at Kansas State University, now Kansas State Teachers University, now Emporia State, Kelly wrote a dissertation called Teachers' Marks, Their Variability and Standardization, again, 1914. 1914 was a very important year. One, the U.S. had just passed new laws requiring students to stay basically in secondary school, at least until their junior year or until they turned 16. There was no system to cope with this sudden influx of students into high schools. Two, immigrants were coming into America in numbers never seen before. So the urban situation especially was explosive and way overcrowded with way too many students relative to the amount of school space that was available. Three, the First World War was beginning. And already, although the U.S. didn't really enter until 1917, already farm crops and machinery were being sent abroad for the military operations on the Western Front in World War I. By 1917, it wasn't just farm produce and machinery, but actual humans that were going over. And it was at that point that Kelly's method became standardized like wildfire throughout education. Why? Because he came up with a method where anybody could grade a test. Tests were all A, B, C, D, item response tests, and anyone could grade them. You just put a template over and you marked what was right and wrong. Let me read you something from Frederick Kelly's 1914 dissertation. Quote, this is a quote from Kelly, draw a line around the word cow. No other answer is right. Even if a line is drawn under the word cow, the exercise is wrong and nothing counts. Stop at once when time is called. Do not open the papers until told so that all may begin at the same time. Again, remember what we talked about with timeliness. Open on time. You have to do it exactly. You have to fill it in. If you are in school now or have a child in school now, this is not so different from the end of grade testing today. Do we really want to reduce all learning to an ABCD test? Do we really want to say you're smart if you manage to draw a line around the word cow as opposed to a line under the word cow? Is that really our metric for what intelligence is? If you're a parent now and your kid comes home and cries because they got this test wrong, let's say they were asked, which of these animals is a cow? Circle, which of these animals is a farm animal? Circle the animal that's a farm animal. A, cow, B, rhinoceros, C, dinosaur, D, dog. Let's say your kid circles dog because you live on a farm and you have a dog on your farm, and in fact your dog works the farm and is a farm animal. By Kelly's test and by most testing, that's a wrong answer. So testing, standardized testing, isn't just teaching you the right answer, it's teaching you how to think like right answer testing. We talk about that as teaching to the test, learning to the test, learning how to guess the answer the test wants. It has very, very, very little to do with how we live our life outside of school. And in fact, that kid comes home crying because he circled dog instead of cow as a farm animal, and if you're a good parent, you'd say, let's Google it. See what Google tells us about farm animals. If you Google farm animals, the first site that comes up on Google is a site called Farm Kids. It's made by educators, ironically in Kansas, and it's a marvelous, delightful site that tells you all kinds of things about farm animals, including about dogs and cows. But most parents look at it, see it's a safe site, see it's by educators, and turn away. I actually played with farm animals with a child. Otherwise, if I weren't doing this research, I would not have stayed on for 15 or 20 minutes. But if you do, something curious happens. The site starts getting slower and slower, and suddenly you get a pop-up that says, little boys and girls, please go ask mommy or daddy to download Internet Explorer. That's why your system isn't working well. This system works best with Internet Explorer, and it doesn't work with Apple products. Mind you, Apple products have plenty of walls around their own apps and products too. They approve and disapprove whatever, or have to approve any app that gets used on an Apple product as well. But the point of that is, we live in this world of abundance, but we're not telling our kids about the 12,900,000 hits that come under Farm Kids. Nor are we telling them that in the #1 hit, the hit that Google rates #1, that's a paid site. It's a commercial site. It's #1 not because it's the best site, but because Microsoft manages it to be the #1 site on the web. And we haven't taught our kids those digital literacies, either how you sort information from 12 million possible answers, nor to be cautious, extremely cautious about the kind of answers they're getting. Instead, sadly, in the United States and worldwide, we're still circling ABCD tests. We're still telling kids, in effect, to do what Frederick Kelly said in 1914, draw a line around the word cow. No other answer is right. Even if a line is drawn under the word cow, the exercise is wrong. That's it. That's today's lesson. Thanks to all of you. We'll be back next time to talk more about how we measure. Thank you.